Now, TRT has filmed a PKK terror camp in the Greek city of Lavrion that Greek authorities had promised to shut down. Greek officials say there are currently no PKK elements in the country, but footage reveals PKK flags still inside this base camp. Journalists found no police personnel around the camp that houses at least 350 people. Turkey and the EU consider the PKK a terrorist organization. The group has carried out dozens of attacks against Turkey over the past decades. Now, joining me in the studio is Hasan Unal, the head of the Department of Political Science and International Relations at Maltepe University. Thanks so much for coming in. I think the first question needs to be why and how a PKK camp could be built in Greece in the first place, especially given that Greece is an EU member.
Oh, well, Greece was an EU member when, for instance, the leader of the PKK, Abdullah Öcalan, was caught by the Turkish security forces in Kenya. He had a Greek Cypriot passport, and then he had been residing in the Greek Cypriot ambassador there. So Greece's involvement with the PKK, its connivance with all these terrorist organizations against Turkey, has a long track. It has a long history. So in this sense, there is nothing new in the footage you've just put on. But in another, it reminds us of what and how Greece has been basically hand in glove with all these terrorist organizations against Turkey. It's no good, but as you remind, for instance, no good for a EU member, as well as a NATO member, a fellow NATO member, against a fellow NATO member, that is Turkey, to basically get involved in all these activities. But it's always been there. And over the last 10 years or so, we all thought that Greece had been sort of downgrading its activities, reducing them a bit, because of the financial economic crisis that has found itself and couldn't get out and all that. So because of all that, and also perhaps Greece was expecting to wrench quite a few concessions out of Turkey through Turkey's accession process to the European Union and all that. But it seems, as your footage shows, we have been basically perhaps mistaken in our expectations that all these activity and the involvement is going on. And moreover, there is also the FETÖ connection, the connection of the other groups that also find basically a refuge in Greece and Greek territory. This is no good, basically.
Right. And I mean, the sad truth is Greece isn't the only European country to have known PKK members on its territory that they've taken no action against. Help us better understand why these countries would let them stay. Do they think there's a moral element here, or is this only really leverage to try to use against Turkey at some point?
Well, if you would always have the window dressing, the moral element is always there. Well, we are basically dealing with the Kurdish problem in Turkey, as they put it. But then I'm talking about the whole European Union world, if you like, at large, not only Greece. But then when it comes to difficult things like the PKK and all that, how would you be involved in the in PKK activities? How would you basically foster them, finance them, support them, and perhaps even supply them? How would you do that? You are a NATO member, you are a European Union member. And the other thing is, well, there is a time, there's also, I mean, you can't do it forever. For instance, in the 1980s, Greece, Syria were involved in fostering the PKK, supporting them together with the Greek Cypriot side and all that. So what happened? Well, Turkey moved against Syria, for instance, in those years and said, well, you have to give it up. And if you don't, then, I'll break your neck, which basically brought about the Adana memorandum, which stabilized relations between the two countries. And it may lead to that point because Turkey's perspectives for European Union accession is very low, almost nil. So the Greek side has to basically get its act together now and basically take this into consideration because it's important. There is no obstacles in front of Turkey acting in a similar way.
Okay, Hasan
Okay.
Unal, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for coming
It's
in. We
pleasure.
greatly appreciate it.